Bugonia had me completely locked in, tense, disturbed, and convinced I knew exactly what kind of movie I was watching. And then it pulled the rug out from under me.
What happened is part of all of us now, and it doesn't go away, and it doesn't get swept under the rug, and it doesn't get excused.
Bugonia is one of those movies where I walked out both impressed and annoyed, which is honestly the sweet spot for Yorgos Lanthimos. It's disturbing, funny in an uncomfortable way, and incredibly well made. But it also made a choice at the end that I'm still not fully sold on. So let's get into it, because there's a lot to unpack here. And with that in mind, welcome back to The Rank. I'm John, and just a quick heads up on format, I'll hit a handful of behind the scenes facts called the Potent Notables, then I'll do a movie overview with spoilers, lots of spoilers, and I'll finish by ranking the movie across 10 categories. And today I'm going to continue ranking the 2025 Best Picture nominees with Bugonia, starring Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons, adapted from the film Save the Green Planet, with a screenplay by Jang Joon-hwan, and the adapted screenplay written by Will Tracy and directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. Bugonia is nominated for 4 Academy Awards, including Best Original Score, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Actress for Emma Stone, and Best Picture. But let's see how this one stacks up, starting with the Potent Notables.
Potent Notables.
As always, we start the Potent Notables with the box office info. Bugonia made $17.7 million domestically and $23.5 million internationally, for a worldwide total of $41.1 million. Now, this is against a budget of $55 million, although it came out to around $45 million after tax incentives. So it didn't make back its budget, though after being nominated, it might have a chance to get some more green. So Bugonia is an adaptation inspired by the 2003 South Korean film Save the Green Planet. Initially, the original director, Jang Joon-hwan, was set to helm the project, working with American screenwriter Will Tracy. But due to health-related delays that prevented Jang Joon-hwan's continued involvement, they were drawn to Yorgos because of his distinctive directorial vision, and they appointed him to lead the project going forward. Now, despite stepping away, Joon-hwan expressed admiration for the Bugonia adaptation, describing it as a magnificent variant with altered DNA, reborn as if by aliens. He also praised Emma Stone's powerful performance, noting it vividly brought to life the effect he had envisioned. Lanthimos' process extended deeply into the score of the film as well. Now, for his previous films, Poor Things and Kinds of Kindness, composer Yerskin Fendrix wrote the score after reading the scripts without seeing any footage. For Bugonia, Lanthimos took an even stranger approach. He didn't give Fendrix the script at all. Instead, he gave him just 4 words: bees, basement, spaceship, and, this was hyphenated, Emily Bald. And visually, Lanthimos kept experimenting with the format. After using VistaVision for the reanimation sequence in Poor Things, he decided to shoot most of Bugonia in VistaVision. So that makes this only the 3rd film of the 21st century to be shot largely in that format, following The Brutalist and One Battle After Another. And as for Emma Stone's transformation, she was asked to shave her head for the role, something she said she fully embraced as part of the job. She's noted that physical transformations are one of the fun parts about acting, and that shaving her head was actually easier and more enjoyable than, say, adding 15 pounds of muscle. That said, the transformation was kept under wraps for as long as possible, with Stone wearing a wig in public to preserve the reveal. And finally, according to cinematographer Robbie Ryan, the hardest actors to work with were the bees. The crew installed a beehive on location weeks in advance and shot on a scorching day with about 30 crew members in full beekeeper suits, only for the bees to refuse to pollinate on camera. The final close-ups of bees on flowers were instead grabbed spontaneously at a completely different location when the team happened upon a more cooperative hive. So those are the Potent Notables. Let's go to the movie overview. And I just want to warn you once again before I dive into this, there will be spoilers. Anyway, right from the get-go, with Jesse Plemons' voiceover, we're being told this is going to be a weird movie. Of course, it's a Yorgos Lanthimos movie, so I suppose that's a given. But basically, Plemons, who portrays Teddy Gatz in the movie, is talking about bees and how beautiful they are. How bee pollination is how 1/3 of our food gets pollinated, which is a wild stat. And they're dying. But why are they dying? Well, that's what Teddy's here to tell us. Teddy, you see, is a whack job, a conspiracy theorist nut job. His theory is that there are aliens called Andromedons who are systematically killing the bees so that they can then systematically kill humans. Aliens have come to Earth to kill the human colony. And with Teddy on this adventure of alien outage and ultimately what Teddy hopes will be negotiation, is Teddy's neurodivergent cousin, Don. Poor Don. He's being pulled along by Teddy's crazy rants and through not-so-subtle manipulation. He even convinces Don to chemically castrate himself, which Teddy has apparently already done. He's hoping to keep himself from being seduced by the Andromedons. Being a eunuch sets you free, apparently. So they're going to do an interesting juxtaposition of lifestyles here. We see Michelle Fuller, played by Emma Stone, living a life of opulence, really. She's working out and staying strong and getting all the best food and fitness that money can buy. Meanwhile, Don and Teddy are doing push-ups in the kitchen and just look altogether unkempt and kind of terrible. Whereas Michelle Fuller is put together and, well, healthy. And they also show us a pristine building that she's working in and give visual comparisons to the dying, impoverished town that Teddy and Don live in. What's interesting also in the beginning here is that the movie doesn't really want you to like anybody, except for Don. You have empathy for Don because you get the feeling that he's being coerced. But Teddy is manipulative, and Michelle is the typical corporate boss who says, everybody should go home at 5:30, unless you've got stuff to do. And, you really should finish your work, even if you have to stay past 5:30, because we run a business here. I mean, we have to make quotas. It's very clear, though, that these two worlds are going to collide. And before long, they do. Don and Teddy kidnap Michelle outside her home. Then Teddy tells Don to shave her head. This is while they're in the car driving, because if they don't shave her head, then she'll be able to contact the other Andromedons. This feels like somewhere where even a conspiracy theory nut would have fallen off. I mean, you still have hair even if you buzz it. It's just short. But this is a movie of tension, although there are comedic elements as well. Michelle is particularly sarcastic with Teddy, and a lot of it hits, probably because the tension is very thick, so the levity feels comforting. Most of the rest of the movie is going to take place in Teddy's house. They're keeping her in Teddy's basement, and all the while feeding us more and more signs of Teddy's psychosis. For instance, we get black and white flashbacks to his mom saying weird shit, talking about how she was sold their poison and now she's being sold their cure. She's spewing conspiracies and child Teddy is just sponging it up. And he uses these memories on Don, saying they killed our family, whenever Don seems to be getting cold feet. On top of that flashback, Teddy's going to be pulled over by a cop as he's biking to work. And then we're going to get a pretty clear intimation that this cop, who was his babysitter when he was a kid, did some messed up shit. I mean, they're gonna come right out and say it later, but right now it's just sort of a hint. But yeah, good thing he's a cop now, though. One thing they do keep showing, though, is that Teddy is clearly intelligent. It's almost positioned as a sort of sadness that he would be so intelligent and waste his intellect on the pursuit of conspiracy. I mean, the guy is able to render a spaceship on his computer and speaks with an incredible vocabulary, and his mind seems nimble enough. But while we're getting that, we're also getting him electrocuting Michelle. And it's at this point where we feel like we've gone into full crazy mode with him. The electrocution part is honestly harrowing. And even worse, she's already admitted to him at this point that she's an alien. Obviously, it's under duress, but you'd think that that would stop the torture, not make it worse. But as he's electrocuting her, he's like, I've never seen numbers like this before. And from that determines that she must be Andromedan royalty, which does two things at once. Lets you know he's crazy, which I guess we already knew, and that she's not the first. And man, do you just constantly feel bad for poor Don. At one point, he tells Teddy that he's feeling weird after the shot he gave him, which was the chemical castration. And Teddy just sort of brushes him off, saying, it'll pass. We get another flashback and we see that Michelle had something to do with his mom. And that's when we see Michelle discover that Teddy Gatz is Teddy's mom. So Teddy has brought her up from the basement and is trying to treat her like royalty. He's feeding her spaghetti and meatballs fit for a queen. But eventually she's gonna set things back into motion and tension again by mentioning his mom. He's gonna start attacking her and choking her, and eventually Don's gonna get him off her, but she stabs him in the arm with a fork. And then she gets the upper hand and starts choking him. And when it looks like she's about to kill this dude, Don ends up hitting her in the back of the head with his shotgun. And naturally, after all this happens is when Casey, the kid-diddling cop, shows up again. And there's just nothing about Teddy that feels anything but crazy with a backstory to explain it. And it continues here, when we get Casey straight up admitting to him that he did that to him when he was a kid. And then to reassure him, he says, I never did that to any other kid. I'm not really sure how that would reassure him, to be honest. The whole time that Casey's hanging around the house, Don has Michelle in the basement with a gun on her. And when she wakes up, she immediately starts trying to manipulate Don. Poor Don. That's like the refrain of this movie. She wants him to let her go, but Don decides to let himself go and puts the shotgun to his head and pulls the trigger. And when that happens, Teddy and Casey are out looking at his bees in the yard. So when they hear the gun go off, Teddy immediately attacks Casey and kills him. So this is just spiraling. When Teddy gets inside and sees what happened to Don, you'd think that would end up causing him to kill Michelle, but it doesn't. The movie makes it seem in the moment that Michelle saves herself by telling Teddy that there's a cure for his mom, and that it's in a bottle in her trunk labeled antifreeze. But it's not really antifreeze. But I think he was so dead set on saving humanity that he wouldn't have killed her anyway, because he saw her as his only chance to save the world. But saving his mom gave him a new purpose, and he rushes to her bedside to put antifreeze in her IV bag, which of course kills her. While he's gone though, Michelle is going to discover the other bodies. So Teddy has killed quite a few people. Now you think she's going to escape, but her plan was to get him caught killing his mom with antifreeze and have the cops come to his place. Alas for her though, he was able to get away and come back to the house. She's taken a new tack now. Now she's fully into being an Andromedon. Convincingly so. I was convinced. She confronts him about the bodies and asks how many were Andromedon. He says 2. She shakes her head and starts telling him the story of Earth and how they accidentally wiped out all the dinosaurs with a virus and created humanity in their image because of that guilt. And this was Atlantis. Then humanity ended up warring with Andromedons and started a thermonuclear war that killed most of humanity. But evolution did its job, and now here we are. So they end up going back to her workplace. And this is when it starts to feel again like she's actually human, and she made up the shit about Andromeda. She brings him to her office, and she tells him that she has to type this long code in to a calculator. And then she's like, you gotta go into that closet. It's actually a teleportation device. Now, before he goes in there, he tells her, I've got a plan B here, and shows that he has a bomb strapped to his chest. But he does eventually get in the closet, trusting that she's going to hit enter on this calculator, and that is going to teleport him to the spaceship. And just as she's about to press enter, as she's walking backwards to her office door, the bomb goes off and his decapitated head flies out and hits her in the face. Crazy ending, right? Well, after all that, she ends up leaving in an ambulance, but then she gets up and she's like, yeah, I know I'm fine. And she leaves the ambulance and runs away on foot, goes back to her office, gets in the closet, and then presses enter on the calculator and she gets teleported. She's in her spaceship. The next time we see her, she's in a spaceship. So we've got a lot of misdirects here. And it turns out she was actually the Empress of Andromeda. And when she meets her council, they're speaking a different language. And she's decided that humans can't be saved. So she pops a bubble on a flat Earth, which was really funny. Actually, every time they showed Earth, it was a flat Earth. And then the camera goes back to Earth and just all the humans are dead. The only thing they show living at the end are plants and bees pollinating. But that's the whole movie. Let's see how it ranked.
Oh, wait.
So the rank is where I rank the movie based on 10 categories: story, acting, originality, film coherence, cinematography, score/soundtrack/sound, script structure and dialogue, character relatability, production value, and my rank. I rank it on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. But before I dive into the rankings, if you're enjoying this episode, please leave a like down below. It really does help me out. But without further ado, the first category is story. And this is a wild story. I mean, it's sort of mocking conspiracy theories, but then giving those conspiracy theorists their dream of being right. Or maybe the point is that they'll never live to see that they were right. But it doesn't matter because they'll believe it nonetheless. Either way, it's a wild ride. I gave it a 9. So that brings us to acting. And the acting is excellent. I mean, you got Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone putting on a clinic here. Aidan Delbus brought the much needed empathy to his role and was excellent as well. I gave it a 9.75. So we go on to originality. This certainly feels original. Obviously, it's adapted from a similar concept and borrows from Misery, but that doesn't mean it's not original. It just means it had inspirations. Now here's what's interesting. I think making her actually an alien makes it more original, but I think it's not as good of a story because of it. And I'm not saying that it's a bad story, but I just don't think it's as strong because of it. I gave it an 8. So that brings us to film coherence. I think the two most glaring things to me are the fact that buzzing someone's hair does not make it so that they have no hair. And I could have abided it, but they doubled down at the end when she goes to the spaceship by having her say she couldn't communicate with them because she lost her hair. It's not like a huge problem, but it's an annoying one. The other problem I had with it was the ending. How were they able to kill everyone? It's just not really explained. These two things are not the point, and it doesn't change the tone of the movie and how well it misdirected you and led you down different thoughts and paths. It was well done. I gave it an 8.5. So that brings us to cinematography. The cinematography is excellent. They frame shots beautifully and purposefully, always pulling your attention to where it needs to be or misdirecting you on purpose. Just really well done. I gave it a 9.5. So that brings us to score/soundtrack/sound. And the score was really good. It did feel at times, though, that it was bigger than it needed to be. Like sometimes we could have sat in the tension longer without the score jumping in and pushing it at us. Still, though, it was really good. I gave it an 8.5. So that brings us to script structure and dialogue. It's an excellently written movie. I thought the dialogue was well done. I liked the way that they made Teddy seem like an almost match for Michelle, but just not quite. I gave it a 9.5. So that brings us to character relatability. Don was the crutch for this category. I mean, it's hard to relate to someone kidnapping someone. I suppose Michelle admitting to be an alien at first because of torture is relatable, but they sort of kill that by making her an actual alien. And I suppose that Teddy's psychosis and everything is relatable, except they sort of kill that too by making him not psychotic. I mean, I guess he's psychotic in that he's killing people, but also, he was right. Anyway, I gave it a 7.5, mostly because of Don. That brings us to production value. Production value is excellent in that they chose their locations really well. However, at times it felt a little too generic. Like Teddy was just generically impoverished, and Michelle's office building was generically sterile. And I know that was the point, but it felt a little too on the nose sometimes. I gave it an 8.75. And that brings us to my rank. I was definitely blown away by this movie. It just didn't stick the landing, in my opinion. It was a gritty descent into madness and psychosis, and then it wasn't, and everyone was dead. It's literally a movie where you walk out and say everyone dies at the end, except it's not a joke spoiler. Still though, it was really good. I gave it an 8. So altogether that puts Bugonia at an 87, which makes it a supreme cinema. This ties it with sentimental value, putting it just below A Complete Unknown and American Fiction, and just above The Bridge on the River Kwai. So after 4 movies from 2025, the first 3 thankfully I did guess correctly, one battle after another still holds the top spot with an 88.5. And if you're ranking along with me, drop your score in the comments. I'd be curious to see if we're on the same wavelength here. But thanks for listening and or watching. Check out my other Best Picture episodes or any of my other movie or sitcom ranking episodes on this channel. Remember to subscribe, comment, and like. For up-to-date rankings, you can check out my website at therankpodcast.com, where you can also email me at john@therankpodcast.com. And if you really want to support the show, you can become a patron at patreon.com/therankpodcast. But for now, it's time for me to be gone. Yeah, okay. Probably because the tension is very thick, so the levity. Cut! Probably because the. Cut! Probably.
He does this from time to time.